See if we have some space. Cool. Yeah, I hope everybody had a good snowy weekend. Looked like although I don't know,
It wasn't. They
the
didn't get 8 feet.
snow fell 30 inches in Denver, didn't stop some of my people from getting out and getting all their runs in. So if you were one of those people, heck yes, good work. But also if you rested, that's nice too. Yeah, I think we have maybe like 30 or 40 minutes of content today, so we probably won't run too far over that 5 o'clock kind of stoppage. But if we,
Essentially, TJ's been driving illegally, and we needed to get a license plate, and we could only get it at 4 p.m.
yeah,
So
sorry, it happens. Um, yeah, so we'll just kind of get into it, I guess.
TJ is crushing it at the small talk. So comfortable being himself.
This isn't
going
my
off
forum.
script.
This isn't my forum. This is like me pushing myself.
It's like when I come home at the end of each day, he's like, "Hello, partner. How was your day?" Mine was great.
I'm not that bad. Come on now.
To give you a hard time, to spice it up, to create more content. I'm a professional content creator. I sit
just
at a
need
computer
water.
all day and I just content.
Okay, all right, awesome. We're talking about workouts today. Yeah, Zoe, you wrote this in here. I didn't even write that. What is that?
Basically, I wanted to communicate that the underlying principle of workouts and of microcosm coaching generally is to train to make running faster feel easier rather than practicing running hard. I think a lot of people, they think training like, oh yeah, I'm going to run so hard. Like I'm going to go hard. And that is that's not great because like, you know, whether you're trying to race a 5K or race 100 miles, you can only go hard for so long. We want to make you be able to go faster longer. So I think the overarching principle of not only this talk, but also literally everything we say to you day in, day out is don't think about going harder. Think about making running faster feel easier.
Yeah, I like that. I like using that framework. I think it really applies to all the different types of workouts we do. And honestly, we can't cover every single kind of workout that you're going to encounter in your training because there are just so many types, right? We've got the basic stuff like hill strides and fast strides, or also known as surges. If you're familiar with some other like marathon running coaching and things like that. We've got those at the basic level. Then we've got, interval work, which is just so broad to think about training. It's like, oh, interval work. Great. That means a whole bunch of things to a lot of different people. And it means some specific stuff to us at Microcosm. And then we've got, kind of longer intervals like tempo workouts and things like that. And we've kind of touched a little bit on these things in a small way, but kind of wanted to maybe touch a little bit more specifically on some of this stuff and dive deep into a few things and speak generally on some other ones. And maybe this will prompt some research and diving in.
Or feel free to ask questions.
Too.
Yeah, like if you're listening live, feel free to drop. Slide into those DMs with your burning tempo run questions.
Yeah, or any kind of, I almost don't want to answer too many specific questions about interval training because there's
it can get so
many types and it's all about the individual athlete, right?
Yeah, and I do feel like sometimes workouts, like if you're a person who like attaches to the details, sometimes workouts can like bring out that monster in everyone. And like we'll get people who will like, I used to have an athlete who would submit their Strava file for like every workout, like even when she would just do like little strides, and she'd be like, how was this stride? How was this stride? I was like, honestly, probably fine. I'm not gonna look too close because like you're on day 6 of training, so it's gonna be fine, So I think, again, the message is don't get too caught up in the details, and zoom out, as with all things in training.
Yeah, I think the biggest message, and if hopefully, you guys, you read my emails But in the newsletter that I wrote this morning at approximately 6 a.m., it was all about zooming out. And I think, although I feel so tired right now, but although I think that it's important to recognize zooming out in the context of overall training, it's really important to understand it in the context of your workouts. Each workout built on the work that you've done before. And I'll use that as a segue into kind of where athletes start out, right? Like,
and this is universal for like,
yeah,
there's some things that are like so specific to the athlete. And this is a principle that is as general as it gets.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every athlete that we work with, they start with their first kind of workout is going to be a hill workout. And we call these hill strides, and it's our most basic, it's just like the most basic thing. And the reason we start with hills, one, it lowers impact forces. So it's a lot safer for athletes who don't have a deep training history and a lot of experience, a lot safer for you to start working on faster running on a hill because it reduces impact forces because you're closer to the ground. I know we've talked about that a little bit on other calls. But basically what these are these are like 15 to 30-second moderately hard to hard intervals that are done on around 6 to 8% graded hill. And athletes in general are going to take 1 to 2 minutes, which is about full recovery between each interval. And the reason we take full recovery on these is because it's all about high output levels on these hills. It's all about power and pushing yourself. I really like to emphasize on these that we're not going so hard that we lose form. You're gonna read other coaches talk about, if you're into reading about training, you'll hear other coaches talk about hill bounding workouts. These are not the same thing. Those are done with much larger leaping steps and things like that. When we're thinking about hills, when we're thinking about these hill work, we're thinking about similar cadence to what you'd be running on your easy run. So around 180 kind of strides per minute. And we're, considering really good form. When you're bounding, you're not thinking about running form in the same way. So if you at all are ever thinking about bounding in these, let's not think about that. Let's think about this as an extension of your running. We're using in the same form. We're using the best biomechanics that we have. And we're also, thinking about lots of turnover. It's naturally, because we're on a hill, you're going to have a little less turnover than you would if you're running faster, flatter intervals. But that's okay. And for a lot of athletes, these are also used in terms of like maintenance intervals as well. So we can, during big periods of aerobic development where we're not able to do a lot of intense speed workouts and things like that, we can maintain speed, we can maintain good biomechanics in those habits by doing hill work 2 times a week. And it doesn't have to be super long workouts. We're talking like maybe for a lot of athletes, like 4 to 6 intervals. Sometimes we do more, but again, it depends on where you are in your own individualized training. And
we don't want you, the key, and like, if you've been training with us long enough, sometimes we'll cue people to do steeper intervals or sometimes less steep intervals. For less steep intervals, that's going to be closer to the 6% side of things. That's thinking like a chill wheelchair ramp, right? Like, we're not thinking about running up a mountain. Just find something recognized as an incline and run up that. And that's still going to decrease the impact in a really nice way. And it's still going to help you exert a little bit more or help develop muscular strength in a way that is beneficial to our training. Occasionally, like if you are someone who's training for a more mountainous or more uphill oriented adventure, your coach might cue you to do a slightly steeper hill. And that's where we get into that 8 to 10%, kind of zone. But what we don't want to see is like for our athletes that have treadmills, them, you read uphill athlete, you see Killian, you get psyched, you try to jam out a bunch of 15% hills. Like, don't do that. You're undermining, like, the idea is not to become a mountain climber. It is to get your body ready to do the things that you need to do to become a mountain climber. It's like several steps removed from that. But if you just trust the process and you do enough of them, you will eventually get there.
Yeah. And from a physiological standpoint, and also thinking biomechanically, when you increase to the grade of the hill beyond maybe 8 or 10%, you're really forcing your musculoskeletal system to increase output levels and force from the muscles to power up that hill. When the hill gets steeper and steeper, you have to extend your stride, you lose the cadence, and then some of the benefits that we get from doing these workouts, which is ideally to make running feel easier over time,
not to go harder.
Yeah, your cadence drops down. You're not reinforcing the good biomechanics that help you become a good runner anymore. And you're starting to work on some other things, like developing power and strength are great, and we can do cross training and all of that to do that. But we really, in these moments, we're really thinking about developing power and strength. It helps to make running feel easier in the long term because we're asking our muscles to produce greater output levels. And they're challenged to do so, and they're very challenged to recruit the fast twitch muscle fibers because of the hill. So you become more efficient at doing that in time. And when you do 4 or 6 weeks of hill work, you get to do your fast strides, and you're quicker off, you're faster, you get up to top speed quicker. And that's because you're better able at recruiting those fast twitch muscle fibers that help you to go faster. And you need to train those kind of things in order for them to get better. They don't just happen overnight. And also there are really small benefits too to your aerobic system. When you run hard up the hill, you are increasing your heart rate, and then you're recovering by jogging or walking down the hill. And so your heart rate is lower, and then it goes higher and lower. And during those periods, you're creating little bits of lactate. And in the recovery period, you're getting more efficient at using that lactate as fuel. So that is really, really beneficial as well. And again, all of this stuff, we're going to zoom out when we think about it. We're not thinking about one hill workout or two. We're talking about, dozens of hill workouts and hundreds of hill workouts over years and things like that really start to make a big difference, which is why we often have athletes doing these 2 times a week.
Yeah, sometimes
at least
3.
for my athletes. I tend to be pretty conservative coach, and I have most of my athletes more often than not do hill work than to do stride work, especially in the earlier phases of training.
Yeah, I love hill. I mean, we're multiple years in, and we're still doing all kinds of hills.
Yeah, I just did hills on
I wonder if you have any advice for athletes doing hills on treadmills, because I know I have a lot of athletes doing that, and sometimes I struggle to properly coach them through it because it does depend on the athlete and the treadmill, but just because you can't go from 0 to, do you have any advice?
Yeah, I try to either tell my athlete to just get off the treadmill, like you step to the side and recover and then hop back on, or I'll have the athlete try to just reduce the grade for the recovery and go down to a walk. And again, like you don't really need more than 2 minutes to recover on these. If you're taking more than 2 minutes, I probably would make the guess that you're going harder than you can maintain good form on these. I think generally, 60 to 90 seconds is plenty of time for most athletes for recovery. So even if you need to do a little uphill walking on the treadmill, I think that's also fine. And you can just reduce the speed on it. But to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the treadmill. I think that nothing really kind of takes the place of being out there on an actual hill. And so whenever in doubt, try to find a hill near you. And if it's 5% grade, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's not going to be the difference.
Yeah, if it's 9%, don't worry about it. Like, that's okay. I really want the focus on the athlete making these hill strides powerful, thinking about high output levels while maintaining good form, good biomechanics, and good cadence, not slipping into like a bounding or slogging kind of feel.
Yeah.
And anybody who's tried to run up a steep hill knows what I'm talking about, where you get to that point where you're no longer really running
Yeah.
up that hill, like where your form really changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, Zoe, what do you have any tips for athletes on this kind of on the hill
Yeah, I
side of
really
things?
like people to lean into their hills because that's going to activate their glutes much more. A big issue we'll see is if people either their glutes are inactive, they're not recruiting them properly, or they're just used to like running up on the balls of their feet on their toes. A lot of people tend to overemphasize their calves when running uphill. If you can lean forward a little bit, and I call it like adopt like the best form, like think about the muscles you would use to twerk, and that's what you're going to really want to harness to get up a hill effectively, not your calves. Like you want to use the big sexy muscles to go uphill. So think about using those, lean forward a little bit, fire up the butt, and take a little bit of the action out of your calves, because like if you're relying on your calves to get up a mountain, you're going to have a day, and you're also going to get plantar fasciitis
Oof,
at some
yeah.
point.
And I would recommend, guys, when you're thinking about the forward lean, you try to match your upper body with the grade. However, the lean really starts at the ankles. You don't want to hinge at your waist, because that can also cause issues with your glutes firing. You should feel a little squeezing sensation on each stride when you're going up the hills. That's how you really know those glutes are turning on. That's something that I really look for in myself and in the athletes I coach to feel as well. But that lean starts at the ankles. It's not a hinge at the waist. And a good way to know if you're doing it right is if you kind of start that lean over and like at the ankle, and you start to kind of flex your foot forward. It should feel almost like you have to take a stride in order to not fall. If you are able to balance, you might not be leaning quite forward enough, or you could be hinging too much at the waist. And then I have a question here about hill repeats when you live in a flat area.
Parking garages are awesome.
Yeah. Ramps. Like up to from like if you're on a bike path and you have a ramp that goes down to a trail that goes below like a road or like an underpass, those work really well. I use those in the Denver area a lot. I would also recommend like highway on ramps if you've got some that are like have a wide shoulder. We've got some athletes who use those all the time. Seriously, I have athletes who use those in Louisiana. Super flat.
My sister used to train in Florence, and she would use like ramps down to the canal.
Exactly.
Which is just like absurdly European.
And the parking garage, at your local mall and stuff like that is like a go-to for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, once you've kind of built some base and you are getting used to some faster running, usually through hill work, we have athletes progress to stride work. And some coaches call these surges, and I like that word too, because these aren't done from a standstill. These are incorporated into your easy run. I think
they're also not sprints. I get so nervous when my athletes are like, sprints went great. I'm like, oh my God, like your knees, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just because like when people think about sprinting, they think about tensing up and like really gritting their teeth and like karate chopping with their arms. And that's what we want to avoid. You want to feel really loose and relaxed, and you want to surge or accelerate. You don't want to sprint.
Right, exactly. And I think thinking about it in terms of an acceleration is really important for athletes. We use the hill to start getting comfortable going faster, to build that speed that eventually helps us build economy. And the next step to that are these fast strides. And usually these are around 15 to 30, 40 seconds. For some more advanced athletes, up to 60 seconds, definitely. But these are done at high output levels. We're thinking about ramping up our speed to our 5K effort. We're thinking about maybe as we get more comfortable with these, ramping to mile effort or faster. And the goal with these is, it's not necessarily to accumulate fatigue. It's really just to get used to making smooth transitions from easy running to faster running, to help the athlete to build economy of motion. Because when we're going faster, we generally cue into a more natural forward lean. We tighten up our arms through our body. We generally land with our feet underneath us.
It's really hard to run badly fast. So when you run fast, it makes your running form and it optimizes like the best mechanics possible. However, you just can't do it like all the time.
Right. I mean, this is intense work, but it shouldn't be so intense that you
should have zero desire to stop.
Yeah.
It should like fit into the context of your run, and you shouldn't be like gassed and have to like lean over and put your hands on your knees. You should be like, oh, that was hard, but I'm totally chill to keep going.
Yeah. And I like athletes for that reason to do these in the middle of runs or around the middle. Definitely after a good warm up, and you shouldn't end with strides.
Yeah. I think, for bonus, you can do them on a slight downhill, not like you don't want to bomb downhill, but like, especially if you're at altitude, if you do it on a very slight decline, you can help counterbalance some of the fact that living at altitude necessarily makes you like
a little slower.
You're going to be a little bit slower forever. So you can either go down to sea level or find a little bit of a decline and use that to help really rev up that top end speed application. And that's something that we do a lot as well. But don't do these on an uphill, and don't try to do strides on technical trail. You want to really do it on a terrain where you're going to be able to access your top end speed and where you're going to be employing your best running form possible.
Yeah, I think, just to be specific, probably more than 2% uphill grade might be a little counterintuitive, and probably more than 2% downhill grade might be a little also counterintuitive. So keep it kind of in that zone, be reasonable about it. You guys are all really smart people with good critical thinking skills. Just kind of, make good judgment calls about the terrain you're using, and know that when you do this stuff on, we like Drew, some of this stuff is in the context of trail running, but when we're doing these things on smoother terrain, we're able to really cue into the biomechanics behind what we're doing. We're feeling each foot strike. We're making sure that we're landing with our feet underneath us. All of these things that are much more difficult to do when we're on trails, when we're on terrain that have different variables, rocks, inclined ledges, things like that are going to change your foot strike, that are going to change the way that your body is moving out there. The idea is to hone these skills on easy terrain, and then take the benefits of those, developed and learned skills back to the trail, so that way you can run on the trails better. Because by having this foundation, you're going to move more efficiently on the trails. And I think basically the big difference between the hill strides and the fast strides is, with the fast strides, there's a little bit of a higher output element to these because we remove the hill. When we remove the hill, there's less resistance you can go faster. The strides are great. They're going to be developing more power and strength. So it's definitely used more like in a way that we can create foundation, and then the fast strides are the next layer to that foundation.
Yeah, they're kind of like refining that strength layer, like taking strength and making it speed.
Awesome. Well, I want to segue over, because we've been talking about, the hill strides, fast strides, and that's all good. But what are we going to start to do when we kind of are feeling more comfortable going fast? Mm-hmm. Naturally, we're going to want to kind of push our effort levels a little bit on some of our runs. So kind of like the next layer to this are, those easy to easy moderate runs, or runs where we kind of kick things up a notch in the second half, or for maybe a specific period of time that your coach might cue you into.
And a couple caveats on that is that we really only want athletes deviating from purely easy runs when they're totally healthy, when they are sleeping like a boss, eating like a boss, being consistent like a boss, because if you have a shaky foundation and you're not eating enough and you're not sleeping enough and you haven't been getting the consistency that you need to support your training, getting too fancy and trying to be like, well, I'm not very consistent, so maybe I'll try to overcompensate for consistency by going super hard, that foundation's just going to crumble. But it's something that we see quite a bit is when people are like, well, I can't run that much this week, so I might as well make sure that all the run I'm doing is hard AF. And that's a pretty flawed line of thinking.
Yeah. And I think it's also really important to just kind of understand when we train, we're constantly building, right? So we create the conditions for adaptation via the workouts.
Mm-hmm.
The athlete ideally adapts to those conditions, and that helps them get better. Then we maintain those adaptations and build on top of them. So when you're, say, an athlete misses a few weeks of training or misses a couple workouts, it's very often that a good coach reorients those workouts back into that athlete's schedule, knowing that the athlete needs to complete those specific workouts in order to build the foundation that leads to the next workouts. And also a good coach blends together specific focused workouts in order to help athletes make that transition. So, I think for what we do at Microcosm, a good way of kind of blending those workouts together and helping athletes make the transition from that strong foundation in hills to a strong foundation where they're feeling comfortable doing strides 1 or 2 days a week to doing faster runs and then eventually like full on interval workouts and tempo runs, is to incorporate, some directed faster running.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, we always mean an effort that is at aerobic threshold or below. We're not talking about stride effort levels. We're not talking about hill output levels, because generally for an athlete, those aren't sustainable for more than a few minutes at best. Even for highly trained athletes like us, if we're hitting mile effort on our strides, that's mile effort. That's,
it's not my all day effort.
That's not all day effort. That's hard to repeat maybe, so it's really important to continue to gradually make the steps rather than if you can't make a workout, we reorient it so you don't have to like leap between weeks. So the foundation is there for you as you move forward. So I like to help athletes do that in the context of like finishing a run strong, kind of a loosely incorporated direction, like finish this run strong, or, second half, easy to easy moderate.
I always like to, for some athletes long runs, I'll cue them to like intentionally try to negative split it.
Right, exactly. So kind of directing them to step it up a little bit, but not to go too far out of the comfort zone. And the reason for this is that, these kind of, these runs really help to ingrain this habit of picking up the pace. And it helps for you to just know and feel comfortable knowing that you've got another gear, and that gear is sustainable. It's not just a 30-second gear or a 15-second gear. That's a gear that you can hold for a couple miles probably.
Yeah. We also want athletes to get out of the mindset of like go out hard and fast and just like hang on for dear life. We want you to start in control, knowing what you're doing with a plan. You get to halfway and you execute on that plan and you speed up rather than just being like, all right, I'm going to, get out in front of this and then just like whatever happens on the back half happens. We want people to be really intentional about their effort levels, like both in training and in racing. And if you want to be intentional in your racing, then you absolutely have to be practicing it in your training.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just going to be able to be intentional for the first time ever at a race.
Right. Totally. You need to practice, and have those same conditions.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think this kind of leads to I feel like the two harder to talk about topics because they are so broad, but interval or repeat workouts, and also then, the tempo and threshold running, which are two, really integral components to an athlete's overall training plan, no matter, what they're building for. whether it's, a 5K, they're working with Drew, or they are, running a 100 mile or working with you or Kristen or Kylie. They're going to have, intervals, and they're going to have tempo and threshold running. And that's just part of the program. Um, yeah. So what are intervals? And I guess in the most basic way to kind of define this for athletes,
it is a unit of time.
Yeah, or I like to think of them as like segments of various lengths with rest periods in between.
Yeah.
And like more specifically, those are segments of very focused effort. And they are designed to and manipulated to directly influence an athlete's like adaptation process, whether
the stress is so specific because they all target specific systems.
Correct.
So like 8 by 2 minutes is going to do a different thing than 5 by 3 minutes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to take that one step to take it one step further. So it's the work to rest ratio that is always going to dictate what energy system that workout is directly affecting or looking to looking to
so like learning to decode target. Your workout means like essentially it's looking at how much rest you have, because like I mean, you can't give someone infinite repetitions, but like, let's say that you were impervious to injury, you could. And what would change the stimulus of the workout is like how long you have to recover between how much we let you recover changes the stress.
Always. So for a lot of athletes, like the first kind of like training you're going to get is really economy based. Why? Because when we start to do bigger workouts that have a focus on specific energy systems, you need to have a base of running intervals before you get to that work. That's to prevent injury. That's so you can benefit more from those targeted workouts. And so when you see on your schedule, you're maybe making a transition from strides to intervals, you might see something like 1 minute intervals with 2 minutes of rest. And the reason why we are giving you guys extra rest as opposed to 1 minute of rest to 1 minute of work, or 1 minute of work to 30 seconds of rest, etc., is because the more time you have to recover, that increases your chance of having higher output levels on each individual interval.
Yeah. And put it simply, the more time you have to rest, the harder we expect you to go. So whenever you see a lot of rest in your workout, don't think, oh, this is easy. You should be like, oh, snap, that's a lot of rest.
Yeah, and that rest is a good thing because it allows you to feel refreshed by the time you start that next interval, so you can execute that interval without fatigue being an issue. And when fatigue's not an issue, you go faster. And when you go faster, you generally use better form, better biomechanics, and over time, you're developing strong neural pathways, which will allow you to run easier but faster using less oxygen in the future. So yeah, most athletes really start out with that kind of like double rest to work ratio just to increase your output levels. And I think it's really important to start athletes off there who haven't had a lot of experience with running intervals before, because we don't want you to finish destroyed. When you are reaching the end of your intervals and you're feeling tired, your biomechanics suffer. You're not running with your best form. You're not running as efficiently. You're maybe going even harder, like your effort level to get to the desired outcome or desired output. You're putting more in.
Yeah. And getting good at efforting doesn't make you a better runner, because you can just only effort so hard.
Right. So although intervals are going to push you aerobically and you're going to be tired doing them, even when you're doing, having lots of rest after each one, it's important to note that when we have more rest than work, the emphasis is usually on either maintaining specific adaptation economy or building economy. And then from there, we really start to target specific energy systems whether it's VO2 max with like workouts that are of a 1-to-1 ratio, or if we go into lactic threshold targeting workouts where we have, say 2 minutes of work to 1 minute of rest. So a 2-to-1 ratio.
And that's where we have less rest compared to the effort, because we don't want you to go too hard, because if you go too hard, you undermine the effort.
Right, exactly. And then, we can even do, targeted aerobic threshold workouts where it's like a 5 to 8-to-1 ratio. And some of those are really race specific, at least with my athletes, because we're kind of pushing that level where we're at the top of that wave where it's like slightly uncomfortable, but you can sustain the effort for long periods of time. So we don't really need a lot of recovery after those. In fact, you're going too hard on those intervals when you can't recover in the amount of time that's given. Gosh. And I think, what I really like to think about when it comes to doing interval and repeat workout is that although our desire is high output levels for a lot of these workouts because it's harder than easy, we don't want to strain when we're out there. We're practicing, smooth speed. We're striving, but we're not straining.
Yeah. Because once again, if you think about like what a race looks like, if you start out straining, you're going to have a bad day. You need to be smooth the whole time. And we need to practice being smooth, even though it's not going to like feel comfortable all the time. So it's like all about finding that balance and just making sure that you're not rewarding yourself for just like going hard for no reason.
Yeah. Gosh, and there are just so many amazing types of workouts that you can get into. Some of my favorites are combo workouts where you target 2 different energy systems in a workout. I also really love progressions and ladder workouts for like race day specific training. I like blended workouts too, where we again are maybe targeting 2 different energy systems or doing a little bit of like longer intervals and then shorter intervals.
What's your favorite workout ever? Like for you, not to give, to do.
My favorite workout it's actually 2 by 10 by 1 by 1 with 3 minutes of easy running in between sets. So yeah, it's technically 20 by 1 by 1.
But with like an extra break.
Yeah. And I guess by definition, it would be close to a VO2 max workout.
That makes sense.
But I really like that workout because I feel like as a slower twitch athlete at this point in my career, I like the rapid repetition of fast accelerations with little emphasis on easy running in between. So where I'm going fast, recovering, it really helps me with the neuromuscular aspect of running, which is the important things, which is like leg speed, smooth turnover, better turnover, faster turnover. And I feel like that always kind of jump starts my system, especially if I've been doing like a lot of like long aerobic miles and building base, or I've been like going through like a mountain running kind of routine. I really think that like, although that workout is really hard and it makes me tired because my heart rate never has a chance to go down because the rest is too short. My heart rate is always up the whole time. It really like the neuromuscular aspect to that helps me kind of switch into faster running gear quicker and gets me ready for a more intense like block of speed training.
I love that.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. What about you?
I like 4 by 1 by 1 with 3 minutes of recovery and 6 by 30-second hills. It's a combo and I love it because it both targets like that 1 minute interval is really hard for me because I also identify as like the slowest twitch athlete of all time. And so like having that interval that absolutely doesn't play to my strengths is really fun for me. And then short recovery. And then you like reset and then you go do like a mountain workout after it, which I really love because you're practicing running uphill on fatigued legs, which I think is like, if you want to be good at racing in the mountains, like learning to run uphill while you're tired is like the whole ball game.
Yeah. Oh man,
And you
I
just get to
love that.
embody two different, like, just like on an emotional level, you get to embody two different levels of being strong. One half of that workout plays into my weaknesses and one half plays into my strengths. I think that's really cool and important because so often we'll have people come in from, like, maybe they're like 100-mile, they're like really great ultra athletes and they're like, well, I don't really like doing speed because I'm not good at it, so I don't want to do it. And I'm like, don't you think like if you did it, you might like get better at it, and then like maybe you might even grow to like it. And that's kind of like that's my background. Like I was
Yeah.
very uncomfortable with doing speed, so it's this like also this emotional component of learning to spend time with your weaknesses and cultivate them into strengths rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to write off this aspect of my athletic potential because like it's never been a thing for me before, so I'm not going to pursue it. And I love workouts because they just force everyone to encounter their weaknesses at some point. If you've never felt weak during a workout, then just wait because that workout's coming. And I love that.
I also really like that style of workout too, because it pushes your critical power point up over time.
Yeah.
So when you go into a hill workout fatigued, or you do the reverse of that, where you start a workout with a big hill workout, and then you do some like faster strides, one by one, or a tempo after getting to trying to force those high output levels in a fatigue state forces your body to become more efficient at using lactate as an energy source, rather than to just discard it. And then you get those fatigue sensations. So it helps you build fatigue resistance, which it's just vital. And then as you can continue to push up that critical power point, you're able to sustain higher output levels in your races or in your tempo runs, and then take your running to the next level.
Yeah. And then Alyssa asks, is there a reason why some workout days feel better than others? Wow. There's at least 9 million reasons, but some just, general guidelines are: don't do big strength training or cross training the day before your workout. Make sure you're easy. We usually don't have people go right. Like we usually have people do an easy day with strides or hills before the workout so that they neuromuscularly are ready for the rigors of a workout and their blood volume is in a good place for it and they're not feeling excessively fatigued or like weird and wiggly wobbly. And that's why we usually put your biggest workout in between 2 days of easy running, because you don't want to just go straight in, and then it's not as beneficial to just come straight out of it. So make sure your easy miles the day before a workout are really, really easy, because you don't want to use all your energy, time, and effort on the easy day, and then you get to the workout and you're like, oops, I accidentally tempoed my easy run. It's too bad. And then, don't lift big, heavy weights in a way that's going to make you feel fatigued. But also, because these workouts target different energy systems, maybe your VO2 max is rocking, but your like lactate threshold sucks. Those workouts are going to be harder than others. Or maybe you're just like a total aerobic boss, but you just don't have that top end. Like different workouts play into different strengths and weaknesses, and so they're just a good way to get to know like what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and they're not all going to feel equally good.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I think probably a easier explanation for a workout that doesn't feel good can just simply be because you've done previous workouts in the weeks before.
Yeah.
And it's normal to experience fatigue. It's normal to have reduced output levels if you're one of those people who is very data oriented and you look at every single interval on Strava, and you see that maybe in the 4th week of training before a down week, or in the 3rd week of training before a down week, your output levels were reduced by a few percentages. That's fairly normal. You're going to be tired, and when you're tired, you're not going to be able to run as fast. So yeah, I wouldn't be judgmental of that. I would actually just know that is completely normal. We're accounting for that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
we would expect it.
And remember, progress isn't always like faster, 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 faster. It's kind of like woo, and then eventually one day faster.
Yeah, I mean,
to oversimplify.
I like that. I was visualizing your graphs.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll have a workout where I'm like, oh my God, I'm the best runner that's ever lived. And then like the next workout I'll have, I'm like, oh my God, I literally can't run at all. So yeah, cool. Do you want to talk about Oh,
Oh, Drew, I think that's a really good question. Um, just to emphasize, to clarify what 6 by 1 by 1 or 10 by 1 by 1 means, that is a really quick way of saying, in the
six repetitions. Yeah.
repetitions of 1 minute followed by 1 minute of rest. 6 by 1 by 1. The amount of repetitions, the amount of work, the amount of rest. And then if you have my workout example, 2 by 10 by 1 by 1 is 10 by 1 by 1. So 10 1 minute segments with 1 minute rest after times two. So generally, a few minutes of rest, and then you start the entire workout again and repeat it. I hope that made sense. Drew, I appreciate you for clarification there, because sometimes when athletes just gloss over 10 by 1 by 1, you're like, what the heck are they even saying?
Oh God.
Or like 5 by 2 by what?
I see people's athletes on Strava doing workouts, and I'm like, what does this mean? And I'm like looking through their stats and trying to figure it out, but I don't know. That clears things up, and I feel a little dumb for asking, but thank you for clearing it up.
Yeah,
sometimes you'll get workouts that almost look like something you have to do like order of operations, like PEMDAS on. Because like especially with TJ, this is like when we hang out, we compare workouts, because that's like a normal couple thing. Like we'll be on runs. I'm like, come up with any good workouts recently, but TJs are always like, because also just because of the nature of some of the specific athletes he coaches, he's come up with some that are just like, there's like 3 sets of parentheses, and it's like all kinds of crazy combos.
Gotta love the combo workouts for mountain runners. They're the best.
Yeah, I always like write my workouts down on my hand, because I haven't been able to figure out how to program my watch with the workouts, because I have a Suunto and it's just like not doable. But
non-sponsored, but Koros, you can put in any workout, as many as you want, totally customizable. It's like been a life changer for me. So I don't have to look at the seconds passing by on that 3-minute hill when I'm just like,
the seconds feel like you're like,
how am I only a minute into this 3-minute hill? I just misjudged my effort.
Having a Suunto has made me really good at doing math, and like the 2 things that scare me the most on this earth are running fast and doing math. So workouts for me are just like a vortex of insecurity where I'm like, oh my God, I feel like my brain's just gonna fall out.
Let's in our last, I don't know. Well, gosh, I thought we were only going to take a half an hour to go through all this, and look where we are. Let's use our last
page of tempo workout notes.
Yeah, I want to see you tempo this tempo page. Let's give everybody kind of the 101 on tempo workouts.
So tempo workout. Tempo workouts are just below lactate threshold. Lactate threshold is approximately the effort when, like, past the threshold is when the body is producing more lactate than it can shuttle at that same effort level. So it starts to build up instead of being regularly cleared.
Well, let's also, lactate is an energy source, and you guys can go in and read about this on your own time. But what Zoe is saying is lactate threshold is the point at which your body can no longer use lactate to help you do the workout that you're doing. It no longer is helping you run. It's now producing a byproduct, which is going to create sensations of fatigue.
Yes. So some lactate is good. That's why running just below lactate threshold at tempo is a positive thing. So yeah. And it's another thing that's really great about lactate threshold is it's one of the most trainable metrics that you see. Like your VO2 max, like in the course of a year, I mean, depending on how highly trained you're coming in, it's not going to budge a whole heck of a lot, but your lactate threshold is super flexible. So like that is something that we continue to work on a lot. So that's why you'll see tempos will be a thing that you will grow to know and love. And I think the biggest kind of warning with tempos is definitely don't do them too fast, because going too fast, and like if you're racing a tempo or if you're just going too hard, you're actually reducing the efficiency of the workout, and you're not teaching your body how to shuttle and clear lactate in a normal, healthy way.
Yeah.
So just like, instead of thinking of it, like think of it as if you are practicing clearing lactate, and you need to stay in that space where your body is still doing that. And if you cross over that threshold to where your body's no longer doing that effectively, and that's where you're practicing, you're not practicing the correct thing. Another great thing about tempos is I find a lot of challenging emotions come up during tempo. So it's another really great opportunity to, double down, get some really great physical training, get some really excellent mental training as well. Yeah, but basically, you just don't want to go too hard, because then acidosis takes over, and the benefits for improving lactate threshold and related variables are actually reduced in the workout. So just don't go too hard. Even if you're going, I would rather, you can go 10% too easy and get way more out of it than if you go 10% too hard. If you go 1% too hard, you're not getting what you want out of it.
And I think it's important to realize, if you're looking at this in the context of a classic tempo run, maybe 20 minutes or more, up to sometimes 40 minutes. If you go too hard, you won't be able to sustain the effort.
Yeah.
You just simply won't. So think about this in the context of an effort that you can sustain for around 1 hour.
Yeah. So it's easier than your 10K effort, which I think of as a 40-ish minute effort, but it's faster than your half marathon effort, which is like a 1.5 hour effort. I recommend against using heart rate data, just because that can be really difficult to measure accurately. But, that good ballpark is between 10K and half marathon, erring closer to half marathon if you're unsure. You should be able to say, I feel good, I feel great, I want pizza. You should be able to say that over and over again. That's a good measure, like a good talk test. You should be able to speak in a few brief sentences, but you definitely couldn't recite Ulysses or whatever. It's not a conversational effort. It is comfortably hard, but hardly comfortable. And if you finish a tempo feeling like worked or wreck, or you need to stop and get your life together before you continue with the rest of your run, that likely means you were just going a little bit too hard.
Yeah, you should be able to just drop back down into an easy recovery effort, not a walk. Doesn't have to be 8-minute miles if that's your normal easy run effort level.
I would
take
prefer
a few minutes to recover, and then you should be able to kind of finish up your run with quality miles, not slogging miles, not
you shouldn't feel like you're holding on or going into survival mode during a tempo.
Yeah I would agree.
Sometimes we'll give athletes speed or hills after a tempo, depending on if we're working on a super specific system. Sometimes, instead of just giving an athlete, all right, your first tempo is 30 minutes, good luck, I guess, don't break. We'll ease them into it with cruisy intervals, which can be, as low as 3 minutes at tempo effort, up to 5, 10, 15 minutes. So that way you get comfortable going at that intensity and kind of figuring it out before we throw you in the deep end with half an hour of tempo effort. Don't mess it up, because that's your shot at it. You only have years and years to figure this out. So get it right, and get it right now. So there's and you get those same benefits out of shorter. You can get same benefits out of shorter intervals, but since necessarily breaking them up, getting that rest changes the stimulus, it's just a little bit different.
And breaking them up helps to trick your mind, which sometimes your mind gets in the way and says, oh, I'm not able to sustain this effort level for 20 minutes. Well, if we break that into 5 minute 4 minute intervals and do 5 by 4, 5 repetitions of 4 minutes, we get to the same total amount of time, 20 minutes, which is ideal for a tempo workout. And it actually, I think, sometimes increases the quality of the run, because the athlete's going to take a little bit of rest in between each, and then they're going to get back to those same output levels, and they're going to be able to carry the higher output level, maybe closer to lactic threshold throughout the duration of the run, which is a much higher quality effort than an effort that starts out at just below around lactic threshold and then continues to decrease by the end of 20 minutes.
Yeah. Consistency is always the goal, but start slower and ease into things if you're unsure, rather than going hard and then just trying to live. That's never the correct way to do things. Yeah. And, for trail athletes, this is a great workout to do on trail. We like athletes to do it on a slight uphill to minimize impact forces, because you're going harder than easy for quite a bit of time. Like 20 minutes at intensity is no small thing. And so one of the things we can do to counteract that impact is to do it on a slight uphill. You can't tempo a power hike. Like, that's not what we're looking for. Not really a thing. Don't do that. But you can do it on event specific terrain. And I love to see athletes do this on trail, as long as the trail doesn't like force them to.
Yeah,
walk.
especially later in training blocks, it can be really fun for athletes to kind of push for, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, or sometimes 20 minutes or more on a long sustained uphill or on like race day similar terrain. Builds a lot of confidence for an athlete, as well as has all of these like physiological benefits too. But so much of the training is beyond like the physiological benefits. It's like, okay, this helps to increase, your lactate shuttling. Great. That's really amazing. But like, what's more important is how that workout makes you feel. Does it boost your confidence?
Let's say your lactate threshold was like the best ever, but if your brain is just like not in it, it doesn't matter. Like, you need to have your brain and your body having those same conversations at the same time and pushing the envelope in both cases. Like, same thing. Like, I don't know, you're the mentally toughest person on earth, but your lactate threshold sucks. Like, it's not that helpful to be the toughest person on earth. You're just going to get hurt. Same thing if you're like the fittest person on earth, but you have like crappy mental game. Congratulations, racing is going to be really hard for you.
Yeah, so I like to really use the workouts as an opportunity of like building my self-belief library up, of holding on to some like experiences that illustrate to me that I can do difficult things, that I can work through challenging situations. And then I try to draw from those moments, later, because the workouts have to be, especially as you become more advanced as an athlete, the workouts tend to be harder and they hurt a little bit more, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And that helps to elicit growth.
Yeah, like fun hurt. Because like so much of our training should feel so good and so easy. This is like your little opportunity to experiment with like, hard stuff.
Yeah.
You want to play with fire just like a tiny bit, but not too much, and it needs to always be on purpose. Oh my God, it's Brady.
Yeah, Brady, can you say hi to all the runners? Hi. Oh, maybe not.
Awesome. Well, that was my tempo.
You crushed that. I think you're above lactate threshold.
Oh, for sure. I'm lactate. I'm no longer shuttling lactate
Cool.
from my system.
Yeah, I hope this I don't know, gave you guys, it's pretty hard to fit all of this into a 1 hour or less talk. But I would encourage you guys, if you're interested in learning more about this, there's some really great books out there. I like The Science of Running by Steve Magnus. It's a really wonderful book that you guys can read in your own time if you want to increase your knowledge about just like the physiological and exercise science side of all of this. Like, oh, lactate is a fuel source. What does that mean? What does it mean, fuel source? Oh, energy source. Oh, wait. there's like these metabolic processes
it's like not
that
the
are
thing
happening.
that makes you cramp.
Yeah.
That's like 80s science, bad 80s science.
So there, yeah. And I don't know, without maybe going over all of this, some of the main principles or takeaways from this call are, no straining. Think about smooth outputs on your intervals. We're always looking for smooth speeds at all output levels, whether you're running your recovery run or you're running, a tough tempo run or a VO2 max interval. Think about smooth speed. That reinforces good biomechanics, which is at the heart of everything that we do. Whether it's on a hill, whether you're doing your 20-second fast strides, or you're starting to get into, interval training, or more advanced interval training like combo workouts or blended workouts and ladders and all of that good stuff. And just know that, it's normal to feel fatigue at the end of these sessions. It's normal if you've been doing many workouts week to week to week to feel fatigue. And so you have to adjust your expectations a little bit and don't force the efforts. That's a big thing that I'm learning in my training is don't force the efforts and make sure that your efforts are sustainable. Ramp up your speed and then hold that speed. If you're unable to hold that speed through the duration of your interval, yeah, it can be hard to, but if you're unable to, try to start that next interval just a little bit easier. Because holding those effort levels throughout is really what helps to kind of push your aerobic system. Yeah, gosh.
Workouts in a nutshell.
Workouts in an hour. Thanks, guys. I hope you found that informative. If any follow-up questions, I would, we'd love to maybe have a.
We're also
another call
definitely
on this.
scraping the bottom of the topic barrel. So if you have anything that you're like, wow, I would love to hear Zoe and TJ talk about this for somewhere around an hour, somewhere around tempo effort, do let us know.
Yeah, we would greatly appreciate that.
Otherwise, it's just going to be like our takes on the Oscar noms.
Yeah, or we'll.
TJ will recap Rambo.
Rambo?
I don't know. It's a movie you've seen. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen Rambo. Not the newest one. I think I saw the ones with Sylvester?
Yeah, but like that's a movie you could recap. Probably would be entertaining.
Like tough guy shoots people.
Yeah. Well,
there's
your recap.
That's the whole movie. All right, guys, have a great week. Can't wait to see you in the logs, and we've got some great rapid fire Friday questions. So we're fired up on our stuff for this Friday. I hope you guys can join us.
Yay.
Have a good one.